Jessica, welcome, and thanks for spending some time with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's been a long time since we've been live chatting together. So excited for our session today.
Very much so. And so, Jessica was one of the first people who agreed to be on my podcast, and I'm very excited to be launching it very soon. By the time you get to this episode, hopefully you've heard others. But there's tremendous, development happening in AI. It's breakneck speed. It's hard to keep pace with, but Jessica has been in the space for a long time. Jasper was one of those early mover companies that was using I feel, if correct me if I'm wrong, before it was as hyped up as it is now. So Jessica, please tell us a little bit about Jasper and your role there.
Yeah, so I lead the AI transformation office at Jasper. Jasper is a purpose built AI platform for marketers. So, purpose built by marketers for marketers with the mission to elevate all marketing and all marketers. So, really purposefully choosing the word marketers and keeping that human touch front and center. I've been in this role for a year and a half now. It's client facing. I sit in customer success and advise our strategic enterprise clients along their AI adoption journeys. Prior to that, I was at VMware for a few years where I started piloting generative AI with Jasper actually as a customer in 2022. And then in early 2023, founded the first marketing AI council at VMware, also in the industry, we were told, and rolled out the company's first AI usage guidelines. We really focused on generative AI literacy and enablement and piloted use cases in all functions of global marketing. So it was with that experience. And then over the past year and a half, advising clients that I kind of have some ideas of what's working, what's not working around AI. And I like to focus on the people process side of things on top of the tech.
Excellent. I love it. And I think your experience is going to be so important for our listeners because as I have been working with clients through with Omni AI marketing, what I'm finding is that there are people who are very excited about AI, but actually adopting it is a challenge. And frankly, what I'm seeing is a lot of business leaders will hire me because they feel there's somebody that knows how to use AI for marketing, so she'll do that. But then when I look into their internal processes and the decisions they're making, it's still a traditional business model. Somewhat recently, I had a webinar where we had the head of marketing for Gamma Dot app on. And if you know about Gamma's story, they scaled to 50 million with 28 people, which is mind blowing. And the way they did it is that their CEO really made it a mandate internally for everything to be kind of AI first. And so, why I'm super excited to have you with us is so you can really give tips to folks on what it means to have AI within your organization and how to build out a true go to market strategy using AI. And most importantly, making sure you're AI ready. Because if you're just launching into it, but you haven't thought through some of the pitfalls, you're going to, run into some issues. So tell us, what is a specific project that you are working on and, what gets you really excited about this AI journey?
Yeah, so my mission is to empower marketers to step up and lead. I feel like I'm proof that anyone can step up and lead in this AI transformation. I was in global demand content strategy, so I wasn't, a data scientist. I wasn't in an AI or analytical role inside of marketing ops. And certainly early on, content was closer to like low hanging fruit use cases, but that's what I like to do. And so with that in mind, I'm working on constantly thinking, how do we enable our clients and how do we enable our own sales and customer success reps at Jasper to really make sure that we're thinking through this from a consultative, partnership sort of approach and way. And so I'm working on a new Jasper Champions program, really kind of pulling out. We have a Jasper community, over 100,000 marketers in an online Jasper community, but really pulling out those champions. So the admins or the program leaders and really focusing on how do we enable you specifically over time. So a lot of times I'll come in and do a session on the path to scale. And it's a lot of resources and I want more time with people, but I'm only one person. So I'm creating this community like we're hearing in everywhere else, right? This shared learning community where they can not only get more resources from me, but then also learn from their peers in other organizations who are in that same role, which hopefully is becoming more and more a dedicated role and not just off the side of someone's desk too, right?
Yeah. Exactly. And, I think that's incredible because as developments happen in the general space, it's really important to be able to learn from each other. And if you have a problem, chances are somebody's tackled that problem, and being able to go to a community and learn and grow and make the most out of, a technology such as Jasper. It's really tough to just try to do it in a silo by yourself. So that, I think, is a really incredible resource for people. So, give us a little gem along your journey, which has been incredible. Is there something you've learned along the way that you'd like to share to help other people out as they're doing AI transformation?
Everything I talk about seems to always come back to these three pillars that I've been using for the past year and a half or more on the path to scale. So, rooted in foundational AI literacy. So, we have to help people get into the mindset, the right framing, rooted in actually understanding what generative AI is and what it can do for you. Through that comes, governance and things like that too. Then, secondly, is strategic use case identification. So, kind of going beyond mass experimentation phase, which is like the give the people the AI and let them come up with the use cases, or a phase where even a lot of organizations are now where experiments are starting to spiral amok throughout the organization, right? And so it's like we need to pull people together and come at this from a more strategic angle and understand that, like, when I log into an AI system or when I wake up in the morning to do my job, whatever I'm doing with AI needs to be a part of my job and how I get measured, as an individual, as a team, as a leader, as an organization. And then thirdly, that change leadership aspect. So taking traditional change management, but adding the leadership capability to that everyone has an opportunity to lead. Everyone has a role in driving culture and communication and that change leadership. So there's a lot of different ways to go off of those three, but it tends to always come back to a facet of one of those. So those are the three things that I think should be considered if you're thinking about, am I stuck? Are we in mass experimentation mode, or is adoption just not going like I thought it would?
Yeah. Excellent. And I think the measurement part, as a marketer or working in the marketing space, metrics is so critical to decision making. And what I see happening with AI, it's kind of, hey, it sounds good. Let's just use it a bit over here and let's use it a bit over there. And there isn't a real quantification of the benefit. And so it's almost like you're realizing this benefit. You're going super fast. You're able to do things with fewer resources, but there isn't a methodical quantification the way perhaps there would be with other endeavors that you can really show the ROI. And so I keep hearing, well, prove the ROI that AI works, which is, again, if you're working within AI, it's a no-brainer. It's like we don't need to waste time doing the math. But in a larger organization, you may need to justify, especially as you're deciding how you're using AI, which AI tools you're using and the spend, et cetera. But that part to me is so critical. And this is an amazing technology, but you've got to stop and kind of almost view it like the traditional technology. So you're really able to demonstrate the incredible value. Otherwise, you run the danger of just using it and not being able to really justify how it is brought forth value. Do you see in the companies that you're working with, are they getting better at quantifying?
So, a couple of things. A year or more ago, the companies that were not even worried about ROI, they were like the early, this is just like electricity. Or one customer told me their CEO was like, I don't ask anyone what the ROI of Google is, or like, hey, what's the ROI of our internet service, as the CFO walked by the office. And I was like, that's amazing. So many people are not there yet, right? But now when you have to choose between a tool that costs, $20 a month or $100 a month per user, then it does actually start to force more of those ROI conversations. So what are we going to get out of, let's say, a purpose-built, marketing tool versus a horizontal tool, right? We at Jasper actually hired value engineers, which is new to me. Most of my background is in telecom and then B2B software. Other companies might be very familiar with the business value or value engineering but they're former consultants. And so I've learned a lot from them in terms of how we look at measurement. And so one of them, for example, who leads the office, she started at a big four firm, consulting Fortune 50, but then also we do all of these assessments and quant data points, even from the last quarter, that states really companies care about three things. They care about saving costs, reducing costs at the bottom. They care about driving revenue at the top, and they care about mitigating risk in the middle. So this bottom saving cost, that's your efficiency metric, right? That's your leading indicator, which is, I think, the easiest one to grab a hold of. But what you really want to be looking at is that the lagging indicators of how you're driving revenue or accelerating revenue through increased agility as a marketing organization, maybe. And that middle one becomes mitigating or encouraging brand integrity. So how are we ensuring brand consistency in messaging across regions and channels and teams? So really that's how we're putting together those sort of business cases. So coming into an organization, and anyone can do this, starting with an AI assessment, right? I always think you want to measure the sentiment around AI of your organization. So you know how much empathy or different ways, right? You need to lead with people. How much psychological safety are you already at as a culture, or do you need to touch on, right? And then asking people about their pain points. What's holding them back from hitting their KPIs and their goals today? And really turning those use cases into business outcomes and into potential impact and pulling that into, frankly, an ROI model there that shows.
The value engineering, I actually just spoke with a CEO who's using AI to build his startup is basically showing value of your product. And so it uses AI to basically input, certain metrics from a prospect or their needs and match it up with your actual business's offering to come up with a value prop. So they're a third-party tool you can use at your company and to do exactly what you said. And it was interesting because when he was talking to me, I had the same feeling as you. I thought, yeah, that's been this problem about showcasing value that often rests with the marketing and sales teams. And you just try to kind of figure it out and pull in product where it makes sense. But there's nobody usually dedicated to showcasing that. And it easily could be like a full-time function to show the specific value, especially as
Yeah.
you get into kind of enterprise selling. So
What's really funny about this team, and business value generally sits in sales, and they're in different industries, right, for different products or platforms. And they were like, marketing's really squishy. Like, I'm not sure how you measure this. And I'm like, that's the problem, right? Is a lot of times it comes back to us in marketing, we're not always confident or have the best metrics of showing our own value on the organization. So I think that's still a core problem, whether you are using AI or not.
yeah, I have really mixed feelings about this because on marketing, there are certain things, yes, you can show short term ROI on. Some things are going to take longer, and some things are, frankly, not that easy to measure. And so I feel like compared to other functions, the whole ROI thing on marketing is a little overblown. And I'm very metrics focused. But sometimes I'm like, are you doing the ROI on your product or whatever other function? It's like you keep investing all this time and resources and money into product development, and then often marketers are left with much less to work with and kind of unrealistic expectations, but somehow this whole show us the ROI. And I often want to say, well, are you really holding some of the other areas to the same challenge? And it's always easier to kind of go back. I think if you I'm going to go off on a little tangent because I'm seeing this company is led by kind of engineering mindset. It's like the attitude becomes that building a product takes time. It takes years and we need all these different resources. And then with marketing, it's like, okay, we're ready. Can you show growth? It's like marketing does not work like that. Does
Marketing
not
takes
work like
brand
that.
takes time, and
It
you
takes
Right,
time.
it's
It's
like same
building
thing.
trust. Same thing. Exactly.
Yeah. It only takes a couple of use cases, though, to also show really high ROI that almost pays for the whole organization to have licenses for something. So, for example, at VMware, the use case that we had on my team in global demand content strategy, initially in 2022, I got it approved because we had to sign up for a 50% reduction in agency fees. We hit that, but what that turned into is projected $500,000 savings a year from one use case alone, regardless of whether the whole department has licenses or not, and what they do with it, right? Which we have continued to track. That one use case pays for the whole tool, right? So it's like you don't have to be ensuring that all 400 use cases are showing ROI, but that's why you have to focus on those strategic, high impact use cases and how are we measuring those? And that's like where you want to focus, while the rest of it can be that like gravy on top, the thought partner, the intangible things that you know are going to help a person's job. It's just harder to show.
Yeah. LTV to CAC, just LTV. I don't see LTV used enough. The minute you could show that, you should be able to justify so many of these things. But, we're actually moving in a very different direction now with AI because so my premise with Omni is that you can basically collapse the marketing department to some degree. I've worked as a marketing executive for many, many years, managed budgets and agencies, et cetera. And so the experiment that I did was, well, can I launch a company using just my knowledge and AI? And I did within 3 weeks, and I signed 3 clients. And then I thought, my God, if I could do this for myself, I could do this to help other entrepreneurs and other companies that are scaling, especially women and other underserved communities that don't get the same level of funding. And so, the ROI factor on the reduction of time and money, my gosh, like that's something that should take you like 2 minutes to be able to prove out. But, yeah, go ahead.
Do you have a POV on which functions are being removed or which parts of the organization, like entry level, mid, or
Yeah.
senior?
So really interesting. What I'm finding that I do in my role is because I function kind of as a fractional CMO at companies. So my role ends up being very strategic, working with the with executives, and then it's the middle part is AI. And basically, you name it, AI can kind of mostly do it. Then there's the bottom part, which is still there, the mechanics, the posting, or editing, the last, what I call last mile marketing. So I'm kind of working myself to figure out through automations and just building a system. My background, I used to work at GE, so I'm really big on systems and process. And so I think if I can kind of crack that, it'll really help it. But it's like top and bottom
Yeah. Individual.
is where, yeah, exactly, is where you need kind of humans. And then that middle part is where AI just blazes through it. I still think things like video and image creation, they're doing okay. But what I'm finding, especially on social media, is people want to see people. So you're seeing a lot more CEOs building in public. For example, they want to see who the people are behind these products and technologies. And so AI is not replacing that, which is fine because that's what we want. We want humans to be able to connect with humans and spend more time doing that.
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking at like the leaders of HubSpot as an example, I mean, talk about category creation, right? Like HubSpot for content marketing back in the day, and kind of leading by example of the almost the executive influencer, right? Where Kip and Kieran are constantly building in public and sharing what they're doing along the way. I think that's what we all need right now, but it's also look at what that's doing for them from a brand and visibility perspective. I mean, it all comes full circle, I feel like, in that sense. It's really interesting because I feel like a lot of people tend to default on like how entry level jobs are screwed. But you and actually Paul Reitzer talked about this recently too, that middle management layer. It's almost like, okay, if there's ever been urgency to lean in and lead your career, don't let AI lead for you, right? Come in and lead your career and figure out that next role. It's that middle management layer that like can't be left behind.
Yeah. And then, if you are in a middle manager role, I think you really need to prove your value and your worth by becoming an expert on AI right now. It's a prime opportunity to showcase that you understand what it's going to take to do AI transformation. And everybody basically needs to become a student again, no matter what your level. There's just too much to learn. And to go deep and get my hands dirty again has been amazing, right? Because the level of innovation is really extraordinary. It's been invigorating for me personally. And I think that's kind of, if people are scared, don't be. Just go out there and try it out and you'll be amazed. And there's so many resources now at your
And one more
fingertips.
plug for middle managers, because I always said like our approach at VMware was bottoms up, and it kind of was. But if you think about my role, It was middle out. And so the middle management layer, whether it's like senior manager or director level, the ability to be close to the work that's happening, to the hands to keyboard doers, and be able to pull in and understand the strategic priorities and perspectives from, the marketing leadership team is, I think, the best position to be in to showcase what AI can do and to step up and lead that transformation in those ways like I've talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the funny thing in our little conversation here is that I start out with the AI CMO 9, and my goal is to give really action-driven questions to our listeners, so to our guests, and so our listeners can kind of take that information away and implement it. We've been talking about some really interesting things, but I want to dive into kind of those questions that again hopefully can help our listeners. So number one, how do I assess if my marketing org is truly AI ready across people, technology, and process? But give us some advice.
Yeah, the first thing I would do, well, a couple of things. And this is why I said it all comes back to those three pillars. So, where's your team at in terms of mindset? Where would you rate them in terms of AI literacy? Or do you need to usher in and ensure that you're bringing in some kind of educational resource? Because if you haven't been doing anything, that's the first place to start to inspire that mindset. And then, when you think about strategic use cases, do you have people who are able to lead those? Right. So, like, it's one thing to be everyone's excited, right? And organizations are like that. And that's what I talked about. Those are the ones who are spiraling in different pockets. But do you have people who could step up and lead internally? So bringing a group of people together, whether you call it a marketing AI council or something else, to lead those pilots and understand the strategic impact, the ability to build business cases and to push that forward. And then lastly, where is your leadership team? In terms of being on board, are they supportive? Are they skeptics? Are they afraid for their jobs? Right? Or are they all in and behind it? Because that change leadership is so important, and you need it at every single layer of the organization. So that's why I was saying it kind of comes back to that. And you can do AI assessments, send out a survey in your organization, bring in the education, but you want to give visibility and support to those people internally who can also step up and lead and give them the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, and it has to come top down in my opinion to really be effective because you can't assume that every person in your company is the type of person that's going to go out, teach themselves, learn. Fortunately, that's just not the reality of business. And so you as a leader have to make sure you're guiding your employees and giving them the tools and setting the expectations when it comes to AI transformation. There's no real way around that. So if you're in a leadership role and you're not actively pushing for this is, it's kind of on you to make sure it's a success. So number two, how do I structure cross-functional governance for responsible AI use? I know this is a big hurdle for especially larger companies to employ AI. I think smaller companies, which is why I'm working with small to mid-size because it's faster. But when you get into larger companies, this is a real concern. So how have you seen governance be handled?
Yeah, and I think that again comes back to who is going to do this and maintain this, which is why that marketing AI council is so helpful. And I might start to become a broken record on some of this. But having marketing AI guidelines. So your company probably has AI policies as a whole, but is it specific enough for the type of work that you're doing in marketing, or do you need to go a layer deeper and really just your do's and your don'ts in which systems and which platforms? But you can also get all the way down to like knowledge base infrastructure. Like if you create a knowledge base, who is in charge of that? Who is tagging that? Who's ensuring that you're uploading the right messaging guide to AI if you have approvals for that? But it all kind of starts with those generative AI usage guidelines, which are better to get out there now and iterate as you go than wait for perfection along the way. Because I think it's like the whole better breaks make for faster acceleration. We have to give people guardrails to stay on the road. And then you could say, don't expect them to accelerate if they don't know how to drive. And so coming back to that education piece.
Love that analogy. Have not heard it before, and it's perfect. Really great. So, along the same lines, are you seeing certain ethical concerns come up, and how are those addressed in as AI is used? And before you answer, just one, I'm when I'm testing AI out a lot, I like to say, just ask. Like, I use ChatGPT a lot, so I like to ask it. draw me a picture of what you think I look like and use some symbolisms. And I'm doing this basically to see what it's going to come up with. And it keeps creating an image of a male. Sometimes the image is a Caucasian male, other times it's an African American male. And I'm like, wow, no, this is pretty far from the truth. And so, how are you using, or what are you seeing on the ethical side to make sure that, whatever output AI is giving is in line with what we're seeing in broader society?
Yeah. I think that's again why you have to educate your workforce on what it is, what it can do, and what it can't do, and what to look out for. I think it's one thing to say AI can be biased. It's another thing to understand what that bias looks like in a response or in an image, coming back to you. Just like you would hope if you're getting content back from an agency or creative back from an agency, you're looking at it with the same lens, but it needs to be emphasized more than others. So I don't think anything's changed over the last couple of years on that. I think it just comes back to having an AI literate workforce that understands the limitations of the AI systems that they're using in their day to day and what to look out for. And the more you can show specific examples of what that bias looks like, especially words and the subtle ones, the more that we can get people used to spotting them.
100%. And this is the danger because AI can move so fast. I can understand that there may be this temptation to just generate output, but if you don't have humans kind of in the loop QAing or guiding, you're going to end up with a lawsuit potentially. It's just really important, as we talked about, is that there are humans at certain steps of the way to guide this very powerful technology, and not just say, hey, I'm going to set it and forget it, and I don't need humans anymore. It's just not realistic.
Exactly.
So number 4, how can I surface and prioritize high impact AI use cases? So there are a lot of ways we can use AI. How are you advising folks deploy it
Yeah.
throughout the company?
Yeah. So I always have the high impact use case discussion with start with your goals or KPIs. We all have them because we have to do more, better, or different. So, that's cool. Everyone has it, whether you're an individual or a team manager, right? Or a larger leader. Starting with those and then asking yourself what's stopping you from hitting your goals? What's hard? What's challenging? Or what are those bottlenecks along the way? And then starting to peel back, is there a way that AI could help with that? Or how are you measuring success today? So it's this if you're thinking about a pyramid in terms of AI use cases, business outcomes, value drivers, instead of starting bottoms up with here's how I can use AI, and then never getting to the what am I actually trying to do here? From a business outcome perspective, how am I going to measure this? And then how does this help the company? You're starting with where does marketing drive value in the company? What are our primary goals and KPIs? And then what are the business outcomes that we're trying to drive? What's stopping us from hitting them? And then what are those AI use cases? So the example and why that use case was so successful on my team is because I had a KPI as a team manager to condense our content bill of materials production time to 4 weeks. Very specifically. So I know I'm going to look at content operations. I'm going to figure out where the bottlenecks are along the way and where we can potentially save time. And that's where it came into we can draft a lot of this internally with AI. Now, that's a very, I feel like, low hanging fruit use case, but a specific example of then also why it was so impactful in the organization. Specific KPI and had a lot of dollars and value saved in that. But then you look at faster time to market, getting content out to stakeholders faster. There's a lot of downstream effects we could have continued to measure there for sure, too.
Great. So along these lines, we want to kind of move from a position of experimentation, although we want to keep experimentation going, obviously, with AI because it's so fascinating. But how do you build a sustainable AI rollout roadmap when there is so much change happening?
Yeah, I do think that you're continuing to pilot new use cases, but you don't want to pilot forever. So I think anytime there's a new use case or a new idea, let's call it, with AI, it has to be tested, right? In a safe environment or with safe data or whatever it is. But you need to quickly determine whether it's going to succeed or not. And if it is going to be or is successful, then you scale it. So that's okay, now we're going to pilot it. Next, we're going to scale it. And what does scaling mean? It could be we're training more people on how to use that new process, and it becomes less AI adoption and more process adoption at that point. Or it becomes, we are now going to integrate it into the systems of work that you're already in today. So maybe there's a new drop down in Excel to run an AI automation that returns content back and it's doing all the stuff on the back end instead of having to log into an app and copy and paste into documents, right? Maybe it's an integration directly into your CMS so that when you go to publish a blog, you hit a button and it automatically writes the meta tags, writes promotional posts, right? All the other things that go along with it. But it is this prioritization of like, what are the use cases that we're able to concurrently test today, quickly scale with the team, and what does that mean? And then how do we just get it into production and then look for the next thing? So I call it now, next, scale from that perspective, sort of similar to a crawl, walk, run.
Yeah. And I wonder with AI and if there's another little layer where because there's so much change happening, you have the kind of an assessment and update, right? Because in I think more traditional technologies, you had a longer time frame where you could roll it out and everyone's using it and fine, there's one new feature that comes out every quarter, great. But with AI in a lot of applications, the development's happening very, very quickly. And so you need to be able to really go back and say, hey, what's the current state of this AI? And especially as I think maybe the LLM speed is kind of tapped out for all intents and purposes, but for a while, right? Even that was ever changing. And so making sure that there's a layer where you are kind of going back to the tech and saying, is this the same out as when we first launched? What are the changes? And get that feedback loop more secure
Definitely.
is a reality. I think that time you're saving with AI has got to go into managing it a little
Yeah,
bit.
I mean, even with Jasper clients, we look at, okay, what are all the ways that you're using Jasper today? That's like the now. The next often is a set of optimizations to that process. So there's a custom app. It's just like there's a better way to do this. You're seeing great results today, but we're going to get you even better results by doing it this way, right? So that's exactly to your point of like we're it's working better, but is there a better way? When something notebook LM, when right deep research, right? How else could we be doing things? Which also opens up a new set of use cases to test, which is why you're always in this sort of innovation mode.
Exactly. Okay, so number 6, how do I align marketing, sales, and revenue teams around AI initiatives? I imagine there's a situation where there's different AI. There's a lot of AI native tools being developed. Original tools that people have been using are getting AI involved. How do you make sure there's alignment as people are being encouraged to experiment with new tools, which may change the processes?
Yeah. I mean, always looking at your existing tech stack is the first place to start and making sure that you're leveraging the AI capabilities within them today. Because to your point, there might already be things there before they're going out. But this is where that marketing AI council, go to market AI council, right? Like we had sales sitting on our marketing AI council exactly for that reason. So sales and marketing and revenue are already chatting today, hopefully, because they're already agreeing on metrics and shared pipeline, right? Or how that's going to work to drive top line growth for the business. I feel like anytime there's pockets of AI happening in different departments, there should also be one that are all those pilot leads or AI leads are coming together to talk about it as well for economies of scale, for exactly the same reasons why marketers need to come together to learn. Learning what's working in finance might be applicable to what you're doing in marketing, and same for sales. So and just thinking about a process end to end, like account-based marketing, that's going to be heavily sales driven. So if you're going into a use case and planning out the business justification, documenting the process end to end, kind of the status quo today and what the new process could be, whether it's an optimization or whether it's an entirely new way of going to market, you're going to include those stakeholders who touch that process and make them a part of the process creation. So then they feel also empowered to test it out and implement.
I think what's interesting is in our conversation, inadvertently, we're surfacing the use cases of humans almost
Mm.
more than AI.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what I mean? It's like all you executives that are rushing to get rid of your humans, not so fast. There are a lot of really important roles for humans to play to really get the most out of AI, from what I'm hearing in our conversation. Number 7, what metrics should I track to measure success and maturity as we grow? Any key metrics around AI?
So we talked about some metrics already before in terms of your efficiency metrics and your revenue metrics, which you're already using for marketing and sales. I created a maturity model a year and a half ago or so, kind of going across 5 phases of skeptical, experimenting, scaling, operational, and transformational. And there's a lot of maturity models out there to be like really specific and actionable than like really high level ones like Gartner and others have. All respect, mad respect for Gartner. But then it looks at AI literacy, piloting, tech stack, organization, and policies. Because it's one thing to measure ROI metrics, but then how are you measuring and tracking the literacy of your workforce, like we've talked about? How are your pilots moving from pilot to scale, and how many of those? It's not even a success factor of how many of your pilots are succeeding. It's that you're deciding whether they were successful or not and moving forward, right? And not getting stuck in this constant pilot. From a tech stack perspective, are you still in apps themselves, or have you started thinking about integrations and what that means for more workflow automation? And from an organizational perspective, is leadership skeptical of AI, or are they all in, or do you have a dedicated AI program in marketing, driving marketing AI transformation? That's the kind of transformational side. And like I said, from a governance perspective, right? There's like, we don't have policies to, we have published usage guidelines for marketing to, we're doing AI artifact tagging and like things I don't even know about because we're not there yet, right? But maybe you have an AI that checks your AI for ethics and bias type things that you look out for, right? So there's scale to each of these facets, I think, beyond just like use cases for teams to think about. And you can't get all the data in the AI system itself. And you can't get all the data without having somebody focused on gathering the data, which is why we need humans.
Yeah, exactly. So we've covered kind of two areas, getting the right foundation in place and building. So let's close this out by talking about sustaining, because that's going to be really critical. So it doesn't feel like you're just duct taping AI wherever you can into your systems. So how do folks continuously develop AI capabilities while balancing creativity and control? This is I feel like this is a very new space that we're moving into, where you want to have innovation, but quality still matters, brand still matters. So how are folks to kind of balance those things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's being really purposeful about what you're using AI for and what you're not as an organization. If your brand in your organization is just people centered and centered on humans and stories, your brand team might be really particular about the copy and content that gets put out there, right? So I feel like there are, in many ways, we're not replacing standard review processes. We're hopefully just condensing the process in some point of that helps the overall process get out there faster. So maybe you're taking less time drafting, but it's still going through your brand review, or maybe it's going through brand review faster because the AI and you yourself are trained on what to look out for. But I think overall, it's this constant learning culture. So you're really driving culture internally. I call it this communication and culture equals change checklist. Around how are you using all the communication channels at your disposal to share quick wins, early wins, share what's working, what's not working, for a variety of reasons of showing people that things are working and showing people that things aren't working, which creates this trust, culture that people need to feel safe. How are you driving recognition and engagement across the team and supporting those people who are stepping above and beyond their day jobs to be the one to roll up their sleeves and figure out this new process and train the rest of the team, right? How are we building up and recognizing those people in hopes to inspire more? This constant learning and motivation side of things. How are we cultivating truly like personalized adult learning journeys, which understands that not everyone works the same way? Not everyone experiments by learning, not everyone reads books, right? So having all of these different things at your disposal. And then that kind of change leadership within the organization. So leadership is not a hierarchical, or it's not only for a hierarchy sense, right? Every single person has an opportunity to lead their role, their career, their team. They just need to take action and be empowered to do so.
Amazing. Yeah, I think there's a real need for experimentation to be now built in to the frameworks. So it's not just, hey, here's a process, go do it, but insisting that your employees now have kind of a growth mindset and are learning. And thanks to AI, there are so many ways. You just mentioned Notebook LM, right? You can learn in so many different ways. That's a mind-blowing tool where you can have a podcast and learn from it. You can do a mind map, so there's a lot of different ways to do that. And I've done quite a few webinars on the hiring with some companies where they were focused on talent sourcing. And so the theme that kept coming up is, okay, you can't hire the same way you used to. You really need to look for people who have a growth mindset, that are willing to teach themselves when needed or raise their hand when they don't understand something, but really come at it with this orientation of growth, which, I think in the past it's been like, yeah, everyone should have a growth mindset. But now it's like, no, you really got to demonstrate that you're one of those humans that is constantly learning in order to succeed with AI. So, number nine, how do I build a culture of ongoing AI learning and adaptability? You just mentioned how important culture is. Give us a quick tip on building that, because I don't think people always do such a great job of ensuring they're building a great culture. So what's your tip?
Yeah, I know I just talked through a bunch of them. I really feel like it comes down to communication and leadership. So, for example, if you're at the top, how are you leading by example? And that's one of the most important aspects of culture. Leading by example, showcasing what you're learning, also happens to build trust and builds a safe environment and shows other people that you're learning along the way too. And then hopefully offers up other people an opportunity to share what they're learning. And now all of a sudden, you've got communication channels where people are sharing and learning. It's just starting to build that momentum and that safe, almost that everyone's talking about psychological safety right now, but that responsible experimentation in a way that inspires other people to get involved.
You nailed it. In order for people to feel safe to experiment, they need to be able to feel safe to surface ideas that may not always be the best ones, but they're encouraged to surface them anyway and potentially go back to the drawing board. But if you have an environment where ideas are constantly shut down, there's lack of transparency, information is kept in silos, it's going to be a recipe for disaster in terms of AI adoption. So, those are things that, again, as leaders, it's really important that they make sure they're creating this culture where people feel safe to just experiment. You need safety in order to experiment, or you're just not going to get the right outcomes. So this has been amazing. Thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you so much, and keep experimenting and learning.